What's the most important cue of appearance for guys? What muscle group is the most important to work on? Do
Well,
women care about biceps? Is what I'm asking.
in terms of physical appearance,
What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about, are women attracted to muscles? Yes, something that many of us have come to a rude awakening over the years is that, at least in my opinion, I think that the amount of muscle necessary to attract women or become like the ideal male physique essentially is heavily overstated, to a degree where a lot of guys end up actually inhibiting their attractiveness by, I don't know, like going too full board on drug abuse in order to achieve some unrealistic ideal or body composition that otherwise leads to deteriorated health outcomes, hair loss, premature aging, a bunch of different factors that are factored into constantly spiking mTOR, constantly having your adrenergic system more redlined, having a significantly heightened androgen profile in general. Like, these are things that definitely have a double-edged sword, or like a, I don't know, point of diminishing returns for sure. Now again, when it comes to natural athletes and whatnot, like, this is mostly in the context of drug use. I see this thumbnail of, James Bond, fucking Daniel Craig looking saucy as hell. Is he on gear? For sure. Like, I don't even know if I've done a natty or not on Daniel Craig. I think I probably did actually, but I don't even recall what my conclusion was at the time, but I did dissect it pretty elaborately, as I have done with many celebrities in the past. And oftentimes for these roles where they have to prepare in such a short time frame and achieve a physique they have never gotten to, with unrealistic expectations of, 20 pounds of lean mass in a matter of like fucking months, they end up hopping on the sauce train. Now again, what you see portrayed on the big screen is not representative of what they walk around at. And sure, it looks, pretty solid in a lot of cases, but it's not necessarily like the ideal for women necessarily in all situations. And a lot of times I think guys think they need to push the envelope harder than they do. Are you ever going to push the envelope harder than you need to when you're natural and achieve some physique that's over the top? No, this is mostly talking about the, pursuing of pharmacologic intervention as a result of insecurity, because ultimately that's a lot of what bodybuilding is, drug abuse as a result of insecurity. And I'm not knocking it necessarily, that's human biology, psychology, and it's kind of just what happens. Like, it would be absurd for most bodybuilders who bodybuild and love it to claim that when they started gear, the main reason they did it was simply for competitive purposes, to step on a stage, win like brutally nothingness amount of money, and have no real upside from it other than the fact that they somehow just love getting a brontosaurus physique and fucking competing on stage and flexing in underwear. Like, how many guys really compete for like the fucking game itself versus the fact that they started because they love putting on ridiculous amounts of mass, looking huge? They had an ego issue that they were kind of like patching up essentially. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, that's the main reason most people get into this shit, is they want to feel, secure in themselves. They want to have a better, emotional security, stability of their mindset, feel fucking like boss as hell. And when they're walking around, you look like the superior, more intimidating human in the room. And just be strong, strength, size. These are admirable traits that are, looked up to and, demand, kind of like inherently demand respect, because people know what goes into building that physique, and you are essentially a physically more dominating presence too. And this translates into many different areas of your life from like a social perspective. So ultimately, the mindset gets kind of fucked up when it comes to this pursuing of muscle mass and strength in the gym and whatnot. And oftentimes it is completely neglecting athletic performance entirely, and is strictly mindful of hypertrophy and just aesthetics, which again, nothing wrong with that. Literally very, very basic human psychology, I would assume, to be behind the cause of most people's motivation to get in the gym and, improve their physiques. One of the byproducts of that is improved health if you stay natural, obviously, which is absolutely great and is a lot of the primary motivation for a lot of people too. But when it comes to physiques like, superhero physiques, as well as other, like really cool, respected, idolized figures in movies and, Hollywood and whatnot, like, peak James Bond or, I can't think of another example off the top of my head that isn't a superhero necessarily, but this kind of thing is what a lot of guys get in their head about and want to, max out. And we have here this, and even if it's at the detriment of health and or a trade-off ultimately of what, like even going past the boundary of getting this bigorexia essentially, where you end up having such a blurred idea of what women would actually have been like totally fine with and like maximally attracted to, and any point above that is like diminishing returns, that is deteriorating your heart health, your brain health, your fucking mental stability, erection quality, just for the pursuit of exorbitant amounts of size with the use of excessive super physiological amounts of drugs. We're going to be getting into what an actual psychologist thinks of this now. This was my, bodybuilder overview, fucking meathead layman perspective. We have David Buss is an evolutionary psychologist at UT Austin. He is one of the founders of the field of evolutionary psychology. His current research is on sex differences in mate selection, mate attraction, infidelity, the emotions of jealousy, lust, and love. So again, I think women are attracted to, I just want to give my opinion, see how in line it is before I react to it. I do think women are attracted to an athletic, lean look. I think that, chiseled features are attractive. I think that having muscle mass is indicative of things like insulin sensitivity and is representative of overall systemic health, metabolic health. This is something that I do think they are attracted to. However, when it comes to like looking like a sauced out Hemsworth and Thor, is that really necessary to maximize, attraction? I would say no. I think you can achieve it by having an athletic look, lean athletic look, that is representative of like maximal fitness essentially. But everyone's different and everyone's mindsets get skewed. And this even, definitely comes with women too. Women in the fitness industry definitely have a slightly different perspective in some cases of what is the most attractive male physique. But let's get into it.
What are some of the cues in terms of what women want? I go to the gym. It's a hotly contested debate. You said evolutionary psychology, and this is in the bro psychology forums that I visit multiple times a day. No, I'm just kidding. What's
to even know of the existence of these like bro self-improvement forums and whatnot, like there must be some degree of reality intertwined with that statement, even though it's a joke, and I'm sure he does not regularly visit those kinds of sites nowadays. I'm sure in his heyday when he was, a younger, more insecure, less successful guy, just like many of us, I'm sure he has, been to, whatever medium of self-improvement he deemed appropriate to kind of like maximize himself. Like this is a very common thing for guys who are, especially, like highly ambitious achievers, but are, riddled with insecurity or whatever. They will actually take action and, go seek out ways to improve themselves and maximize different aspects of their life, regardless if it's in social interactions, how to dress yourself, how to groom yourself, how to gain muscle in the gym, whatever it is. I'm sure there was some reality tied into that statement. That's totally fine. We're all on the fucking same page, dude. If you're on the, like that's what this channel essentially was founded upon, to be honest.
It's the most important cue of appearance for guys. What muscle group is the most important to work on? Do women care about biceps is what I'm asking.
In terms of physical appearance, a good shoulder to hip ratio, so relatively wide shoulders relative to hips, is one. Women tend to prefer men who are physically fit and well toned, but not muscle bound. So like if you go to, someone like those early, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing the Mr. whatever it was contest, you see women don't find those attractive, the extremely muscle bound guys, but they like a guy who's physically fit.
Now what I would say is like, maybe it's like absurd to give a counterpoint to somebody who studies this for a fucking living, but women's perceptions are like wildly different depending on the circumstance. So if you show them a picture of a sauced out of their mind bodybuilder who is in the gym, max vascularity, flexing his face off, literally about to prolapse himself because he's trying so hard to look yoked, they're gonna be like, ooh, disgusting. But if you see the same guy in like a regular size shirt walking around on the street, they might be like, wow, that guy is extremely well built. There's a definite, like, even for guys, like how many fucking guys will see a top bodybuilder's legs in like, you know, shorts versus like joggers versus flex in the gym training and be like not even understand the disparity between like shit lighting, good lighting, pump versus no pump, etc. Like even people in this industry who follow this shit for fun as a hobby and are significantly intertwined with it in their own personal lives and follow it religiously, can't even tell the difference oftentimes. So when it comes to women, you know, like even with, you know, a 6 foot cutoff, for example, if a woman is like, you know, has a superficial cutoff, she has no fucking idea. Like if the 5'11" guy is actually 6 feet or the 5'10" guy in some cases, if she's like, you know, 5'5" herself or something, or that the 6'1" guy is not 6 feet or is 6 feet or isn't 6 feet. Like it's, their perception is not necessarily reality in all cases, but I don't think that means you need to be a jacked bodybuilder, because oftentimes you still will look absurd even when you're in clothes. I just think that there's a steep drop off of perception of the actual circumstance, because again, a lot of these situations are only going to be perceived at like peak lighting, peak shreddedness, peak whatever, and then a girl will get grossed out by a guy who's like 180 shredded sometimes and be like, that's too much. When we all know when that guy's walking around on the beach, they'd be like, that's great. Or he's walking around in a t-shirt, they'd be like, sometimes they might even be like, do you even lift weights? Because they just perceive like lifting weights with a fucking like Arnold physique, for example. So that I would like to see, I don't even know if I'd want to see like controlled studies on it necessarily, because we see oftentimes this represented in like, I don't know, like how many YouTube videos have we seen where it's like rate the physique and it's like guys in the fitness industry, and then it'll show the guy, you know, shredded versus the guy in clothes or whatever it is. And like the perception is clearly not intertwined directly with the actual reality of the circumstance. And I don't think women actually know what they want in all cases. But anyways, you certainly don't need to look like a fucking bodybuilder. You need to be athletic, like he said, lean. I agree with everything he said, although I do think there's a slight discrepancy in that women are not going to perceive a guy who's 205 jacked at 6 feet tall or whatever it is, the same in clothes, walking around, or just in random like circumstance, walking around at the grocery store in normal lighting versus literally in the gym lifting weights and flexing. Like there's a massive fucking difference, to the point that they wouldn't even think it's the same physique if they saw it.
High shoulder to hip ratio. They like guys who are physically taller than they are, and guys who are a bit above average in height. So if the average is, I don't know, 5'9", 5'10", and out there for humans, depending on the culture, women prefer an inch or two taller than that. So
shoulders, height, dad bod. What's that about? Why do you want a dad bod? Why do you? Why not? How do I define dad bod?
What is a dad bod?
Dad bod is not muscle bound.
Okay, so out of shape.
A little. No, just a little bit. Okay. A little bit of cushion for the pushing. I don't know what the kids call it these days, but just a little bit of fat. So why do they not want guys to be obsessed with their body? Is that some evolutionary thing?
Yeah, I think that women might interpret a guy who is so obsessed with his body that they might view that as a sign of narcissism.
Yes.
And they also see it as a sign of insecurity, I would say, too. When you see a guy who is, you know, constantly checking the mirror, thinks that something's like wrong with him all the time, even when he's like, you know, the fucking representation of physical perfection, essentially. Like there's definitely something to be said that's unattractive about the mindset that is the bodybuilder too, in some cases. Whereas guys who were just like athletic, fit, just like train and are content with themselves and just like know what they bring to the table, I don't know, like there's definitely a lot that goes around with this stuff and everyone has their own individual preference. But I think in general, like if you gain whatever your genetic limit is in terms of muscle mass potential naturally, and you can maintain a reasonably lean body fat percentage without the detriment of inhibiting hormone synthesis, if you can actually adequately nourish yourself. And how you achieve that, obviously some people are going to have more testosterone suppression than others. Some people are going to look better, leaner than others. Some people look literally fucking like Skeletor at 10% in the face, and some people still have like a roundish face at 10%. It's going to depend on the person, but like in general, the closer you can get to a 10%, I would say, the better, without hormone suppression ideally. And if you do have hormone suppression, I would definitely suggest circling back and looking at your dietary intake, mainly micronutrient, fat, carb, protein ratios. A lot of people overdo it in one component or the other and end up severely inhibiting their sex steroid synthesis via this malnourishment, essentially, even if their calories are equated. Not always the case, but that seems to be like people who fat deprive the shit out of themselves who are natural, for example, thinking that if they just max out protein insanely while they're cutting, like that's the best thing to do. And they end up with crashed hormones. Again, you need certain substrate to produce certain things in the body, and neglecting any area is going to be potentially very detrimental to your overall outcome. So again, I would say getting as close to 10% as you can. That's not realistic for some people, and that's fine. It also depends on where your fat distribution is, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, lean, athletic, the maximum amount of muscle you can genetically produce. And yeah, just ideally being athletic, having mobility still, it's definitely not as attractive to be a, hindered bodybuilder who can only essentially function by doing bench press, squat, and deadlifts, and then has like no other, hobbies or fucking anything they do with their life necessarily, or physically incapable of performing anything else. They get gassed out in bed. Embarrassing shit. And it certainly has happened to me in the past when I weighed like 250 plus pounds. That is like gassing out in a few minutes, sweating like a goddamn pig in the sack. Not the best thing ever, dude. Not a good not to mention not a good look with the Michelin Man face either at 250 plus for me. So anyways, this is me basically elucidating in a far more elaborate manner than perhaps necessary what is the ideal. In my opinion, though, based on my historical experience in the bodybuilding, working out, fitness industry, and I think this is like pretty spot on advice. Get a good shoulder to waist ratio, indicative of you've put on a significant amount of whatever amount of mass you can genetically you're capable of doing with a maxed out top tier diet, circadian rhythm, sleep hygiene patterns, blah blah blah. And you also are lean, as represented by the waist being smaller and having that good triangle or X frame or whatever you want to call it, having a good ratio, and then being lean, athletic, not muscle bound, which seemingly is implying like steroid use essentially. But yeah, that is, I think they are. I just think the lines are seriously blurred on this shit. And no, a dad bod is not ideal, despite what the media may portray and lead you to believe. Top comments. Lex is getting closer and closer to finding his future partner with every episode. LOL. From these interview clips, I've gathered that Lex is just trying to get an edge in understanding how to find women. Lex's face after he said cushion for the pushin' was hilarious. Crying, laughing face. Yes, unfortunately for women, body positivity ironically doesn't extend to dating short guys. Gotta expand the comments on that one. I'm 5'8" and literally never had an issue with getting who I wanted. I don't know why that's always a go-to for dudes. I'm 5'6", and yes, some women might not find me attractive because of my height, and that's all right, but in general, I don't have a problem getting women, even the ones that are taller. 5'5", I swear I'm basically invisible to women. I'm not saying it's impossible, but just making a comment on a lot of woke progressive females that I see on dating accounts that will literally list their minimum height requirement. I can definitely attest to the fact that a lot of women have an unspoken height requirement. However, they're unspoken, like, even when they say, like, I will not bend on certain categories or certain, like, checklist things, if there's a guy who's good enough, they will bend. This is why they have flexibility, and they don't actually know what they want, is what I said earlier in the video, essentially. Like, their perception is not necessarily reality if they have a guy who's slightly under their height cutoff, but he is, seriously ambitious, very confident guy, humorous, great social interactions, has a lot going for him in other ways, aesthetically pleasing. healthy, vibrant individual, well-dressed, good hygiene, great friend circles, like all of these things. And rich is not necessarily for high quality women isn't necessarily a requirement depending on age. I would say if you're a young guy, you can definitely get away more with just high levels of ambition, working towards that financial representation of success. I don't necessarily think you need to be a fucking baller at 22 years old, obviously. And it's just a different series of events and different checklist items to try and max out that ultimately give you as much of an edge as possible. And if you're neglecting one area or another, everyone has some sort of shortfall, no pun intended. And some people, it is literally their height, but it's not something that is going to limit you from high quality, attractive, intelligent, charismatic women that you'd want to be, have involved in your dating life. You will still have success if you are checking the boxes in every other area. Because how many guys have every box checked and don't have at least 2 boxes unchecked, or severely neglecting in those areas? Like every guy that you're competing against, there's no perfect individual that is fully fucking dialed in all areas. So even if you are, short in the height category, it's not ideal from a superficial aspect, unfortunately. But again, there are some guys that are just going to fail with women because they're fucking terrible at talking too. And they're tall individuals who are good looking. Maybe they get away with some one night stands and stuff from girls who just think they look pretty, but ultimately they will fail when it comes to high quality relationship sustainment. If sustainment's even a word, sustaining, whatever it is. You're the man, Lex. Keep at it. Your podcast is an asset to the world. I think Lex misunderstood him here. He already said they prefer the shoulder to hip ratio, and that's definitely not a dad bod. He was just pointing out that they don't like freakish big muscles like bodybuilders. It's like how men generally like big tits, but might not be into freakish big tits. Neither side generally want record-breaking levels of anything from the other. Just slightly above average is optimum. Women like a bit of muscle and strength, but nothing extreme generally. Yeah, it's kind of weird how that shit works. I talked about this on Joe Rogan's podcast. We talked about massive cannon tits and how it makes, there are big giant lips that are surgically enhanced. It's so weird how certain things you're biologically attracted to, but then when you overdo it in certain areas, all of a sudden your brain fucking flips a switch and it's nope, too much, proportions are too fucked up, not into it anymore. Having a giant silicone ass, you can just tell that it wasn't built by the gym. It looks ridiculous in many cases. Having a fat, not naturally built ass, not necessarily the move, although a lot of girls think so. 100% you do not want dad bod. I get that some girls are into it, but I really doubt it's the norm. Yeah, I would say any girl who's legitimately into it has their own self-image issues and just doesn't want to feel insecure about a guy who is I don't know. Obviously that's, different. I don't know, there are guys who literally really out of shape chicks too. So maybe I'm probably wrong on that, but anyways, Lex is going off the rails here. Laugh my ass off. I think we've sufficiently beat this topic to death. Let me know what you guys think about the most attractive male physique. What do you think is and again, obviously everyone has their own individual preference, but what do you think is an example of the perfect hybrid that is the most generally appealing to the most high quality women? I don't know, if you have a Hollywood example of an individual, or just I don't know, fucking social media influencer, whoever it is, I'd be interested to see who most people think are the pinnacle of general widespread appeal. Be interesting. I wonder what this guy's is, because there gotta be some archetype of or maybe there's not, but it would be cool to see if they were what his perception of the archetype of maxed out fucking appeal would be in both men and women. It'd be interesting. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. Comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. Much appreciated. Like, subscribe. Check out the Lex podcast. This is a clip from this full episode here. He has a lot of good shit. And like I said, subscribe, drop a comment, helps the algorithm. Follow me on Instagram, @replacemore_dates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support me, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My preventative medicine, hormone replacement therapy platform for self-service labs, diagnostics, blood tests, and subsequent medical oversight. It's turnkey. We do it all there. As well, you can check out Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode pre-workout formulas designed myself from scratch, my recommended diet model for gaining muscle and sports performance to try and become this pinnacle of a male specimen. And anything else I'm associated with, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.